Summit at the convention center last.
So I remember you go. Like,
No, I'm really glad that you had
first did it, but then
All right, good evening, everybody. Today is Monday, October 23rd, 2023. I've got 7 o'clock, so I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole, but slightly less than whole today, to order. We'll go ahead and get started. First up, we have a discussion from the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council. I will turn things over to Councilmember Padova to introduce our guests.
All right. Thank you so much. We have Luke Sulfridge and Philip Lepla with us from SOPEC. I reached out to them just to have another, I was very interested in the aggregation when we talked to NOPEC, and so I reached out to them just to have another company come in and talk to us and give us some more information. So go ahead. And also, I'm not sure I said, but thank you guys so much for coming.
No problem. Thank you for the invitation. All right. So we are the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council. We are a council of governments. My mic adjusted right here. There we go. I like to say we're governed by the communities we serve. So we will talk about some of the cool things we've been able to pull off together, a lot of the benefits of the programs as it relates to aggregation. I know you guys have already heard some of the nuts and bolts of aggregation, so I'll try to go through that maybe a little quicker, but talk specifically about our vision of the program and how our programs are operating. This is a fun representation of a lot of our member communities. We have communities as large as Cleveland and Dayton. Here locally, Upper Arlington's a member, Marble Cliff, and then small villages in Appalachian, Ohio. So that's the first EV rural transit bus in the state of Ohio there with Athens in the middle. That's the first EV police car in the state of Ohio in Logan. The first net zero EMS station. It's that small facility on the bottom. And then we also are very active in the deployment of EV chargers. And then also there is a credential that you guys can earn known as the Green Power Communities. And EPA has 20 of those in the state of Ohio. We represent all 20 of those at present. We are, again, a government entity. So we are governed by statute in our formation. As you know, in Ohio, after we deregulated, you can shop for power as an individual, as a community, or a group of communities. We represent a group of communities doing this together and using our combined buying power to really push policy agenda forward, to find really competitive pricing for our members. At present, 100% of our member communities are renewable energy powered, 100%, all of them. And all of them are also below the market by double digits. Across the board. So we're very proud of being able to achieve both of those objectives very definitively against the standard service offer. Thank you. We are a public entity, so our meetings are open to the public. Sunshine laws, we're audited on a regular basis. And we think there's a lot of transparency that's welcome in the state of Ohio, particularly around energy, because we are a public entity ourselves. We have 2 governing bodies. We actually been using our General Assembly more frequently as of late because there's more flexibility and us being able to convene together. But that is every single member has 1 vote at the table. We meet quarterly with that at present. If we weren't doing that, then our board of directors would be a subset of that group, which is the 5 largest communities, 5 regions of the state, so 4 corners in central Ohio, and then up to 5 at-large representatives. But again, the General Assembly supersedes, so it's going to be one of those other bodies, meets every quarter with committee meetings happening in between. Here's a map where we are at present. This is changing rapidly. In fact, I don't know if Upper Arlington's on here yet. So this is, they joined about a month ago. So we're excited that we are truly going across the state of Ohio and able to support communities as a shared energy office statewide. We have a couple programs we do statewide beyond aggregation. One, we partner with USDA through the RETA program to do solar assessments for small businesses and farms and rural areas, with the exception of urban areas being urban agriculture. But we provide a lot of services well beyond ag. And we'll talk about our grant team and our legal team. And I definitely welcome questions on that front as well. And our buying power at this point, about 1.1 terawatt hours of energy. We're also AP Energy's second largest customer, only behind Columbus. So for buying power, we were the first in the state to allow net metering. So for solar customers, that's really important to them. A lot of others have since followed, which is great. But we're able to do things that are meaningful effectively that way. And because of that, we've also secured a partnership with AEP Energy as their exclusive provider for aggregation programs moving forward in the state of Ohio. We're very proud of that, and that provides a back-end team that's very robust with AEP Energy and their ability to help us get competitive pricing in a very nimble way so that we can watch the market, We can talk more about that means as well, but just know that our team is pretty big, in part because of that. We also believe in sustainability broader than just energy. So we are an active partner at a lot of nonprofits and environmental groups statewide and beyond. So some of these are regional efforts to promote grid modernization, renewable energy. Others are historic revitalization efforts, so Main Street programs, Heritage Ohio. We view that as part of the sustainability of helping the built environment and cherishing our history and helping some of the buildings that are already established move to the next iteration of energy usage. Also very active in local chamber circles, so we're intentional about joining chambers and communities that we have members. This wasn't touched on last time, so I'll touch on this briefly, but the grid, when folks refer to it, is this large series of interconnected wires. There's a representation of what the grid looks like in the US. We are within a subset of it that is managed by PJM. I like to call this where air traffic control meets Wall Street. So they're responsible for reliability of the grid and the power purchased for the default offerings. Aggregation does not change this dynamic. They are still operating the grid for better or worse in the exact same manner, but we're within the PJM footprint. So if you see the blue, from Chicago to the East Coast. So we can go deeper in that if you have any questions there. Community choice aggregation has been in Ohio now for over 2 decades. It's not unique to Ohio, but I think we've been able to achieve things in Ohio. Some of our programs are the first in the nation when we achieved some of our green offerings and programs, and happy to see it expanding as a concept for folks to be able to take advantage of the free market to really do creative things and to find real savings for their members. Again, we're talking strictly about generation component of electric bill. We're not talking about delivery systems. There are over 400 different communities across the state of Ohio that have aggregation programs, so this is not unique to any one corner of the state. Communities of all sizes, political stripes have engaged in this, especially over the last year or so. As the price of the standard service offers have gone up dramatically, a lot of folks have decided to either reactivate programs, like Upper Arlington did with us recently. Similar with Dayton a year ago. Dayton actually saved about $300 per household by activating the program and being able to pick the time when they re-entered the market with us. So that was a really great story of roughly about $11 million across the city, while being 100% green, I should say. Cleveland just switched to us from another broker recently. They reactivated their program after a brief dormant period where their broker removed their product for a time. And we relaunched their product at 49% below the standard service offer. Now the standard service offer has gone down a little bit for them, so they're at only 34% savings. But we're very happy with the savings that folks are experiencing right now. Folks that are eligible for the program would be folks who have not shopped for power. So about 2/3 of your customers within the city limits, typically within APE, Ohio territory, do not shop for power. So it's really to serve those folks to give them an alternative default option. So folks who are on the percentage of income payment program are not eligible in the program. Those folks are being served by that and not able to join. If you have a large industrial load, so large industrial customers are not eligible to participate in ag. They have to find other means of shopping for power. If you've shopped for power on your own, so if folks have went to Apples and found a product that works for them, we are not interrupting their service at all. Conversely, though, if they think that our product's better and they compare it to any kind of early termination fees, some folks are choosing. In fact, in Cleveland right now, we have an opt-out rate, I think just a little bit north of 98% right now of folks that are, the opt-out rate rather. So we have a participation rate of a little under 2%. Yeah. 2.6 is our current? Okay, so almost 97, I guess, percent participation rate, a little over. So we're excited that folks are taking advantage of the programs. Very similar numbers in Dayton right now. And happy to be able to offer that to the residents and let them see real savings. And then, obviously, if you opt out for the program, you're not held in the program. One thing that we believe in, and not all aggregation programs do operate this way, but there should be no early termination fees. So in the spirit of providing an alternative option, giving residents the choice to leave the program at any time without being beholden to an early termination fee. So we want to be there to serve the residents, so we do not do that. They can come in or out of the program as quick as practicable through the utilities. So there is a delay every time they do it, but we're not charging them a fee to do that. So in order to join our particular program, similar steps to other programs, but you need to hold 2 public hearings for plan of governance. We already have ours on file with the PUCO, so that's already established. And separately, a piece of legislation to both approve the plan of governance, to adopt it, and then to join SOPAC as an entity. And after all that's completed, an officer from the city would need to sign our charter, which is effectively just acknowledgement that everything else is proper and in place. I mentioned at present, 100% of our programs are green, and 100% are saving money. I will say that we do have a opt-in brown product, so we like to call it our step-down option. So we do offer that to residents. A lot of councils like to have that feature built in. Very few folks choose to take advantage of that, but if you want to take advantage of the aggregation program, you're definitely welcome to call in and step down to a brown power option. SOPAC as an entity, we believe in fixed pricing. So some aggregators have variable pricing, and that can get you in trouble in a volatile market. We lock in for typically 12 to 36-month periods for electricity. Natural gas, you're only eligible to go up to 24 months. But we believe in creating a fixed-term price using the best available information in coordination with our communities. And we've been very successful at using that model. Even in communities where we locked in and the market may go down, we're still seeing double-digit savings. Even if we don't try to gamble to find the bottom of the market. If we see real savings that we feel confident are going to be there for the duration of the term, we have a conversation with the community and we're happy to lock them in at those rates. Not gambling, trying to beat the market. We're using informed decision-making as we're doing it. We also are very interested in helping communities add solar. So public facilities, water systems, rec centers. So we have the ability to do RFPs for those communities to help them deploy solar. We're also working on building out generation for ourselves and our communities. So the aggregation load itself, hopefully in the very near future, will have large components that are renewably sourced within the state of Ohio. Do not knock legislation is available if you'd like it. We also have community grants as a program feature. So this is not mandatory, but most of our communities do participate in this. It comes back to the community on a per meter basis on a volumetric system is the way we accumulate it, and then the board decides how much they want to deploy each year. But we've used it for a lot of local matches. So a lot of these grants you see, we're paying a very small portion, and I think that's the best use of these dollars to help save money for our communities in the long term. So whether it's a private grant or a federal grant, like the DOE grant for the bus, or we also had battery backup for the Athens microgrid project. So Athens now has solar at their water plant, solar at their sewer plant, and battery backup at their water plant. And then that EV bus that I just showed is driving around getting charged there as well. So we're very willing to be flexible and creative. We had a small village in Meigs County recently approach us and ask for a bridge loan. They're doing an LED lighting upgrade on their Little League ball fields, and that was going to be $250,000 for that small community. We are able to provide the bridge capital for them. It's 100% reimbursable, and they're now doing LED upgrades, which are going to pay for themselves in very short order. So 70% of our grant dollars go directly back to the communities, 20% go towards a revolving loan fund, and 10% goes towards regional projects where it's multi-jurisdictional or working together on a project. You'll see kind of probably a weird one for us given our name, but the Big Bailey Mining Heritage History Project. The largest mountain bike trail system east of the Mississippi is an 88-mile mountain bike trail system being built southeast Ohio on former strip mine land. So we were approached by a few of those communities a few years ago to provide the base of a heritage tourism study to look at the existing infrastructure that's been closed since 1956, to see its value and stabilization efforts, and architects to see what was possible for them in telling their ecotourism and heritage tourism story. So we provided the funding for them to apply for a $1.5 million grant to do the architectural studies. So I can go on to a lot of different grants, but those are some of the most fun things we do. Renewable energy for us is defined as wind and solar with some hydro. So we are careful in talking to our communities of what meets their definition of what they consider renewable and sustainable. So at present in Ohio, most renewable energy programs are using what's called RECs. These are a certificate program. And when you purchase power, whether it's the utility off the grid to provide the standard service offer, in order to meet portfolio standards, or whether it's us trying to meet our own criteria for 100% green power sources, largely most of them right now are using what's called renewable energy certificates to get there. So we're buying the green attributes of a power production on a per megawatt basis, the same as you buy power on a per megawatt basis, but there's a separate market for those green attributes. The power itself all goes into a giant bucket, whether it's wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, whatever. So you never know exactly what you're getting, but the green attributes are sold in a separate market. So we meet our standards and our policy objectives through RECs. As I mentioned earlier, we do aim in the very short future to bring those dollars to our communities themselves, where it's welcome, and also to see the assets come to Ohio to provide actual electrons. So that would be fantastic as well. But it is a bridge. And this is a short video. I'll show it real quickly, but I definitely encourage folks to go back and watch it on what RECs are. EPA does a much better job.
You probably know about the benefits of green power or renewable electricity produced by sources such as wind or the sun. Renewable electricity produces no fossil fuel-based greenhouse gas emissions or other air pollutants. That makes it cleaner than electricity that comes from burning coal or natural gas. But if you don't have your own wind turbine or solar panels, how can you use renewable electricity? With renewable energy certificates, also known as RECs, you can purchase renewable power and help the renewable energy market to grow. To understand how RECs work, it helps to understand how electricity is generated and delivered. From fossil fuel-based power plants to wind farms, every power generator produces electricity. This electricity travels to you through a network of transmission and distribution wires, which we call the electric power grid. Electricity from many different sources mixes together in the grid. There's no way to distinguish the exact source that your electricity came from. So how can a consumer like you know that the power you're using is from renewable resources? That's where renewable energy certificates come in. Each REC represents a specific amount of electricity produced and delivered to the power grid by a renewable resource, such as wind or solar. Let's take a wind turbine, for example. For every megawatt hour of electricity it produces, the turbine's owner generates a REC that they can either keep or sell. If you buy the REC, you are now the owner of that green power. RECs allow you to claim that the electricity you use came from a renewable resource with low or zero emissions. In fact, anytime someone claims to use renewable electricity, RECs are involved. Even if you produce your own renewable power on site, you're generating your own RECs. RECs are part of every renewable energy purchase, and they're a credible way to buy and sell renewable electricity because RECs can be uniquely numbered and tracked. Just like an online bank account that keeps track of your electronic banking transactions, anytime a REC is sold, there are systems that track and record it. Once you buy a REC and say that you're using green power, the REC can no longer be sold or used by someone else. The REC can be retired in the tracking system to prevent someone else from claiming it. EPA recommends buying RECs that are certified and verified. This ensures that your green power was generated by a quality renewable resource, and what you bought was actually produced. Why are RECs so important? Because they are the currency of the renewable energy market. They allow people and organizations to choose cleaner sources of energy and reduce their carbon footprints. RECs give you the flexibility to support renewable energy even if you can't generate it yourself, or if your local utility doesn't offer a green power product. If RECs did not exist, it would be difficult to say for sure that you're using renewable electricity. In today's electricity market, RECs really do make a difference. By buying RECs, you're providing revenue to support renewable energy projects. When enough people buy RECs, these purchases promote growth in the green power marketplace and help to avoid greenhouse gas emissions across the country. For more information about RECs and how they work, visit the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Green Power Partnership.
All right. So again, we're really proud that our communities meet the high standards for those RECs, and accordingly, all 20 current EPA green power communities in the state of Ohio are SOPEC members. Some other credentials I'd highlight that we are happy to assist across Ohio is SolSmart. This is a credential you can get to really signify that your community is solar ready. So this is a credential looking at the red tape as it relates to permits and having those conversations ahead of time. So a homeowner trying to install solar on the roof doesn't have to figure it all out, and if there is steps that can streamline the process, perhaps making the permits easier, more streamlined internally, this is a great way to have that conversation ahead of time. We also are very engaged in solar as an entity. My background's in solar. Stephanie, who's with us today, helped the Cincinnati Zoo get solar in her past life as their sustainability director. Phil is also very active in the solar space, so we're very happy, and this is only a portion of our team here tonight. Here's a part, I'll focus on this for a minute because this probably matters a lot to you. So Here is, and this isn't cherry-picked, these are, I believe, I'm looking through the list now. Yep, this is all of our communities, including updated with Upper Arlington, of where they are in pricing. And it's going to depend on when they locked in the price, how much their savings is. But you'll see across the board, while being able to deploy renewable energy as a product, all of our communities are saving significant amounts of money. And for many of these communities, that is millions of dollars in savings. So we're very excited to be able to share that story, that we've been very successful with uninterrupted service while providing clean energy to all of our communities. So I can come back to that one, but I'm pretty proud of that one and the work that our team and our communities have done together. So pricing for us, we can get into the weeds here on this if you guys would like, but effectively there's a delay if you guys were just to activate your program. It's 2 weeks public notice required to have the hearings themselves, so back that back. And then once we have reestablished the program, filed for certificate, then we approach AP Ohio to get a list of information. But the takeaway from this one is it takes about 2 months to reactivate a program. So by the time that the required notifications to residents, the PUCO has a period review of the letters to make sure everything's proper. We've had no PUCO complaints, I should say as well. But all that's part of the process, and residents could see power somewhere between 2 to 3 months once this all plays out, if you guys were to decide to activate a given program. Again, sustainability is a big part of what we believe in and do, and that goes beyond the energy itself. I also want to highlight that we are growing pretty rapidly. So we have electric and natural gas programs. Our home base office is in Athens, Ohio. We also have an office in Dayton, Ohio. And we are currently opening an office in Cleveland and Upper Arlington as we speak. So our team's growing, and as we grow, I think one of the benefits of public brokers is that we don't have shareholders, we have communities and members. So we're reinvesting back in those communities, whether it be community grants, if we're successful in having excess revenue, or able to deploy staff. I mentioned our grant writing team. We now have a full grant writing team. There's a lot of money coming from the federal government right now, and we are trying to help our communities identify what meets their needs. So if there's new construction happening, if there's opportunities to draw down electric car chargers, we are working really aggressively at identifying those opportunities and working with councils to help them facilitate what their goals are on given programs. So I think that's a really great opportunity and a really good benefit of our program. Additionally, we also have 2 outside law firms that help us with some of the regulatory issues, and then also we have 2 nonprofit affiliates. So one of our firms is helping us with that. One is focused on renewable energy deployment, large-scale solar, and the other is focused on energy efficiency at the residential level. So that's a small taste of what SOPEC's doing and who we are, but definitely turn it over to any questions you may have for us.
Thank you both very much for being here, and thank you for the presentation. Questions, comments from colleagues?
I do have some
Yes, Ms. Padova.
questions. So, let me see here. The community grants that you were talking about, are those open to just the city or like businesses in the community as well?
So they're prescribed back to the community, so the community can direct them, and I'll let my attorney speak to a little more on that, but for process purposes, our board approves the release of the funds. They're not competitive, so a given community has a formula that's their grant dollars, so nobody else, and if you don't use them in a given year, they roll over. So particularly for our smaller communities, they're able to access those for a bigger project when the time comes. So right now with a lot of IRA and other funding streams coming, they're able to leverage that for local matches, which is fantastic. Or I'll give another example. The city of Belpre, Ohio, which is a small community, and it's actually the second oldest city in the Northwest Territory, but down in Washington County, their pool pumps were acting up over the summer. And so they hadn't accessed their grants in a couple years, reached out to us and says, do we have money in that fund? And they did. And they were able to upgrade their pool pumps to variable flow pumps, so making an efficiency upgrade at the same time, accessing those dollars that they had in reserve. So as it relates to other entities, we've worked with nonprofits, but that would be in conjunction with us releasing the funds, and then our inside council feeling good about it, and then you guys would have to receive the grant as an entity yourselves. So we worked with nonprofits to use those funds flowing through council, but that's the process to make sure everybody's proper in release and disbursement. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add to that, Phil? Okay.
Accurate.
Thank you. That answers my question. And what is the process like for mainly like the administration, or if we moved forward with this, is there a lot that they have to do? Do you guys handle most of it? How does that work?
So from an operational standpoint, it's a very light lift. So if all you want to do is open the program up, we write the legislation, we draft it. So obviously your city attorney would want to reference the legislation, make sure it's proper to your form. It follows very closely, a lot of it, to Secretary of State's legislation, so there's nothing really radical there. But they would need to walk you guys through 2 pieces of legislation and hold 2 public hearings. And the public hearings, depending on the needs of the community, can be during a council meeting, could be outside a council meeting. It's up to each community to interpret what fits their needs. But from there, the only other piece I would ask for them for is guidance when we lock in pricing. So we definitely want the input of the administration as we lock in that, especially that first round. What a lot of communities do is they go beyond the first round, they'll be part of a larger bundle, and we'll ask if they want to be involved, and they'll either be engaged or not, but they're aware that it's happening. But the very first time, we want to make sure we're being very engaged, so we'll educate them along the way that we think now's a good time, not a good time. We've had communities like Dayton sit with us for the better part of a year because the timing wasn't right, and they weren't comfortable, or the timing wasn't right in the market, and we're happy to advise them that way. So for them, it's that initial interaction of deciding when you want to launch pricing products. So once we have a product ready, then we'll approach them, have a meeting, and we'll let them know we think the window is going to be coming up here. We think this is a good time or not a good time. Right now, it's a pretty good time to buy across the board because the standard surface offer is so high, and their prices are locked in largely. It fluctuates a little bit based on capacity charges, but largely AP Ohio's rates are locked in through next June. So anything you're buying for now, you virtually have guaranteed savings for the next, well, call it 6 months, call January start. So 6 months. It's beyond that we have to talk to you guys about what the market is and what we can give you as best information as possible. But for the next 6 months, for any community onboarding, the savings are very, I won't say guaranteed because there's an attorney sitting next to me, but very sure based on the current pricing the utilities have locked in at. So with that, we also watch, and it's a long answer to your question, the answer is very short for that one, but the utilities have auctions where they set their standard default pricing. In fact, AP Ohio is having their first auction for the next supply year next month. So we watch those very closely and determine where we see pricing, where they bought pricing at, and make a determination accordingly if it makes sense to buy or not. But for the administration, 2 pieces of legislation, and then either serving directly or appointing somebody within city government to serve as the representative to our governing body. So our governing body meets again quarterly. You can send a proxy if you don't want to attend directly, but we definitely welcome you to attend and love the engagement. Our membership really likes the meeting and even the after meeting of being able to share ideas and great things that are happening in the community. So that cross-peer learning, I think, is a really important component to a council of government model of proceeding with this. But the load's very light, I guess, once you get beyond that initial period, and we provide all the legal support you'd like.
Yeah, I think the only other thing I would add to that is certain communities like to be more engaged, and so we have ongoing conversations, 3, 4, 5 times a week with different cities' staff members. So it's really as much engagement as a community wants or as little as they want. So it can be either way. We basically become an extension of that community.
And we're there to support what they're doing. So communities that have sustainability offices are really that back-end support. We're helping them achieve their goals. And it may be procuring data for them, organizing it. Dayton, for instance, used our community grant dollars to add another position to help them apply for a credential, which I'm not sure it's officially out there yet, but they're getting ready to get an award that they use that to go for. But yeah, other communities, maybe we meet with them weekly or monthly, or they come to our General Assembly and we're in communication as it relates to that. So it really is up to the community how engaged, how much time they want to invest into it. But the resources are there if they want to go really deep with this. But if they just want the aggregation programs to be stable and saving folks money, it's a pretty light lift.
Thank you.
Ms. Bowers.
Would you mind reviewing, thank you for being here tonight. Would you mind reviewing the citizen-facing, the resident-facing aspect of aggregation from SOPEC's perspective?
Yeah, happy to do that. So aggregation is a way for a community to take control of the default utility pricing for their given community. And so as a resident, if you have been proactive yourself and shop for power, you don't have to participate in this program. It's an opt-out model for most communities. Almost every community does aggregation. It's an opt-out model. So periodically, you'll get a letter in our program once every year, 2 years, 3 years, saying the rate's getting ready to change. Here's the new term length. Here is the rate. And if they choose to not participate in the program, the resident can call a phone number. In fact, we actually deployed a QR code last time. So QR code, phone number, and say, I would like not to participate in this. If they miss that initial 21-day opt-out period, there's no early termination fee. So again, we are below the standard service offer at present in all our communities, so they're saving money. But if they don't want to be part of it, that's fine. It'll just be the next billing cycle that they're opted out once they call in, whenever it synchronizes again. If you adamantly never want to do this program, there's a list at the PUCO they maintain that's a permanent do not aggregate list. We've actually had a lot of folks calling in to join our programs in recent years, though, given the price differential of the market versus our program. So from a resident, they'll receive a letter in the mail. Some communities, like Upper Arlington, we reactivated, they did a citizen public information campaign, very effectively, I'll say. It was very well done. So we held a series of public meetings with residents to inform them with the city of what this would look like, how it would impact them, get their feedback prior to council taking a vote. And then council had full information as they went to vote of feedback from residents. And then they actually did a mailing to every resident as well, advising them, and then did some postings on bulletin boards, actually. So all those things are welcome, but an informed citizenry is good for everybody, so we definitely welcome that. Letting them know what they're part of, what the opportunities are, but for the residents, they need to, and actually the wait time on our phone calls, I think it's 5 seconds at the call center, which is managed by AP Ohio. Yeah, so it's a pretty short time for them to call in if they choose to not be in the program, but that would be the only cost to a resident that's not currently shopped if they choose not to. But again, in Cleveland, it's like 2% that have chosen to do that, that have opted out. So it's very overwhelmingly embraced by the residents, at least by the numbers.
The only other thing I'd add to that is approximately 2/3 of residents don't shop. They don't go out to Apples website. So really what it's doing is it's setting a new default rate for those customers that don't shop. And so it's hopefully setting that default rate at a lower rate than the standard service offer, and thereby helping those residents that don't proactively go out and do that. And the other thing I guess worth mentioning too is we don't like to gamble. So when we see real savings on the table, when we're looking at the local utilities auctions, we will be sure to communicate that to our communities and let them know it's not a race to the bottom. Nobody knows what the bottom of a market is going to be. So if there's real savings out there, we like to lock those in.
And your SSO rates here, I have 2 follow-up questions to that. Your SSO rates here, is this based on conventional power or on sustainable energy?
So
All green.
our savings, these are all green, 100% green power. So this is the savings against a brown power product by the utilities. So in our case, it's AES Ohio, which is in the Dayton area. It actually stretches up a little bit in Western Ohio. First Energy Territory, which is Northeast Ohio. And for AP Ohio Territory, it's their brown power standard, no program, versus our green power. So these savings are all while being green. Yeah.
So in using the Cleveland rate, for example, their rate currently is 6.302 cents, I believe, per kilowatt hour, and that's 100% renewable energy. So if somebody chose the step-down brown option, it's approximately 5.9 cents. So.
Okay, thank you. And then the other follow-up question that I had was, you mentioned, I think that this is important to some residents who are very, like the 1/3 that you mentioned that are shopping themselves on Apples to Apples. And so I wanted to just ask a follow-up question on the PUCO permanent opt-out. Could you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, so if residents, and this is very important to reiterate, residents who are currently shopped under their own contracts are not impacted by the program whatsoever. So if you are in PIP, which is a program, or if you've shopped for your individual power, you are not impacted. This is for folks who've never or have chosen to go back into the standard service offer are going to be participating in this program should they not choose to opt out. What was the follow-up to that? There was another piece of that question.
The PUCO.
Oh, thank you.
opt-out.
Yes. So second to that, so that's one way of getting out of a given program term. So if there's a given term, you can opt out of that program. The way to permanently, and we've actually moved, we don't try to sweep up folks that have chosen to do it in the past. We try to remember them on the list. We don't trip up and have them in and there'd be confusion. But if you want to ensure that you are never in a program like this, it's certainly within your right. You can go to the PUCO's website and subscribe to a do not aggregate list, and that puts you permanently on the list unless you choose to get off of it at some point. But you never have to worry about it again if you choose, and residents definitely have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
How long ago was SOPEC brought into
Yeah, so we're in our 10th year. So we were formed in 2014, so we're coming into it. We'll have an anniversary year coming up, so.
Just a quick question for me. Again, thank you all for being here. Really, really do appreciate it. Trying to understand the difference and the advantage between what SOPEC can offer versus perhaps another aggregator where you have the ability to opt for all green renewable energy. Help me out there.
Yeah, so we made a policy decision, and this was organic. So we started in Southeast Ohio. We had a few communities that were 100% green from the very beginning. We had other communities that were not. And a number of years ago, we approached the communities that were not, asked them, community by community level, if we had a larger buying group, how they felt about being green as the new default. And to a mayor, as we're saving money, they were happy to be part of the larger group. So the green component is pretty minuscule. When you look at the price of power, it's really the timing that is where we're seeing a lot of the savings. So we've been successful at being better at the market and having savings while being green. So it's a policy decision for us, feeling it's the right thing to do, and our communities, at least in electric, gas is a different story, but on the electric side, having green power as the standard offering has been pretty popular.
Thank you. And then on the early termination, so Ms. Bowers was mentioning the opt-out. That's very important to her, and for me, so would somebody who becomes aggregated and then decides, you know what, I'd actually rather go shop myself. Yep. The termination fee, I think you were saying after 21 days, there is no term, or
there's no termination fee at all. So in an aggregation program, you have 21 days to say that I don't want to participate in this before the program puts you into it and you're switched for your service offer. If you, within 21 days, any program by state law in Ohio, you're not swallowed up into it, for better or worse. Beyond 21 days, it really doesn't matter in our program because you can opt out on day 22 with no fee. The worst case scenario, if you're opposed to the program, is that you may be in the program for a month or so until it switches you back based on the rates. But at present, there's a savings there. So the 21 days only matters. Now, some programs historically have had fees where there may be a $50 fee if you miss that 21-day window. That's not us. So we have zero fees for early termination, period.
In zero to come back into the program.
Yep.
So theoretically, somebody could go in and out.
If they find a better rate, great. If they decide that this wasn't for me,
fees
it didn't
either
work,
way.
going to come back, that's okay too. Yep.
anything else from council?
Just
Yes, Ms.
a
Dover.
comment, if I may. I thank you guys so much for being here because I think this is, any time that there is an opportunity for us to do something that will be a direct savings for our residents is a great opportunity. And when we're able to do something that also helps with sustainability as well, then that's just like the cherry on top. So I appreciate you guys being here tonight and coming in and giving us some more information.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up, Public Arts Policy Status Update. And just included this because I know the panel did meet last week. And I believe, Mayor, you were here with the joint meeting with our Planning Commission, but I believe Mr. City Attorney was there. And so just looking for an update and any impressions, anything you're able to share.
I'm not part of the panel, so I'm not the perfect person to ask. You might want to ask them. All I could say, I mean, I'm just there advising them on the legalities. So we had the meeting. We gave them an outline of what the legalities are and then turned it over to them and let them talk about what they want to talk about.
I believe they have another meeting scheduled next week.
November 1st. And then that's when they'll approve their minutes.
Anything from council?
Yeah, just, I guess, so November 1st will be the next meeting?
Yes.
And do you anticipate that outside counsel will be present at that meeting as well?
Yes.
Was there any type of action taken by the panel, any type of chair designation or anything like that?
Christian Peck was named the chair.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Next up, items from council office. Looks like we have the tobacco retail licensing program back, ordinance 71, 2023. Sorry, I was just confused. We have a ordinance number aside? We haven't had a first on this, right? Yeah.
No first.
Yeah, there's not been a first.
We have not had, okay, all right, thank you. I'll turn things over to Ms. Padova on this one.
Thank you. So we met with I just want to give kind of like a update and possibly have Mr. Molarski give us a little bit of feedback. But since there's not a lot of us tonight, we probably won't have too much of a discussion on it. But we met with the Franklin County Public Health Commissioner, Joe Mazzola, last week, myself, the mayor, Chief Spence, and Kevin and Miranda. And I think that he was able to clear up some of the questions with the administrative processes and was able to confirm that the licensing fees would be paid directly to Franklin County Public Health, and also the split for any fines, and that they would be running the program, so there wouldn't be too much of an administrative ask on our end for putting this into effect. So I think that he was able to clear up most of the questions that were part of the administrative process. And I think that one of the main concerns was the proximity clause in regards to youth-oriented facilities. So I was hoping that Mr. Molarski might be able to enlighten us a bit, because the way that I was reading it and the way that the mayor and Chief Spence were reading it were just a little bit different, and I'm certainly not the one with the law degree, so I'll turn it over to you to let us know if you can kind of clear that up a little bit.
What is the question?
Oh, so there was some issues with the whether or not, I was under the impression that when if a place already had a license, if this was put into effect, we have the grandfather clause, and myself and Mr. Roth were under the impression that once, if they decided to sell, that license would sell with them, and it would still be kind of like grandfathered in under that. But then the mayor and Chief Spence did not read it the same way, so I'm not sure what is right or wrong, or if we can perhaps change that.
Okay, well, I'd say you need to look at the two main sections are 73705, which is the transferability of the license, and then there's 73708, which is what you would be calling the grandfather clause. Under 73708C, it specifically says that notwithstanding sections A and B, which refer to this proximity of both the youth-oriented facilities and proximity to another tobacco retailer, notwithstanding those, all tobacco retailers operating lawfully on the date of this ordinance would otherwise be eligible. So that means that, as you said, they're grandfathered in. So and then it goes on, then you go to the transferability is the second part of that question, where you ask, can you transfer it? And it does say that subject to the provisions of 07 and 08. Now, 07 is when a license gets suspended or denied or revoked. But so assuming that the license is in is valid, then you go to 73708, which then kicks in the grandfather clause and says that pursuant to that section, a licensee may assign such license to a third party or permit a third party to assume such license in connection with an arm's length transaction. So it has to be an arm's length transaction for the sale of the business, whether by acquisition of assets, a merger, or otherwise. There are other provisions which say that that goes into the denial, suspension, or revocation. Basically, if a person tries to, if they change the, let me try to find the exact wording. Okay, so C, when you go to 1, 2, and 3, there are also restrictions on when you can transfer the license, such as if you change the type of business. So the example that I'd heard was the BP station across from the high school. It's clearly within the youth-oriented proximity provision, but if BP were to sell to another gas station, that would be fine. If they were to sell to a vape shop, that would be changing the type, and then the license would then be affected and not be able to be transferred. I think some of the confusion, I talked to Matt about this, I apologize, I was working on a brief most of the day today, so I didn't get to put a whole lot into this, but I tried to touch base with Matt as to what you guys had talked about, and I think some of the confusion might come under 73705B. That is an attempt to make these licenses similar to a liquor license, in that the license can be transferred, but it has to be approved, the transfer has to be approved by the city, but the city cannot unreasonably withhold their consent to that transfer. And so that's the protection for the person transferring it, but it does have that two-step process. One, they have to sell it at an arm's length transaction to a same type of business, and then the city council, specifically I see in here, has to approve that transfer, just like you do liquor licenses when they're presented to you. And so I hope that clears it up a little bit.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know if, Mayor, if you have any other questions or
So,
if it clears things up for you a little bit more, but.
it's clear as mud. Clear as mud. So what I would say, and I know you and I had a conversation last week, last Wednesday, actually after the workshop. So thank you for joining us for our meeting with Mr., or I should say Commissioner Mazzola Tuesday. He did indeed answer a lot of the questions that we had with regard to how this legislation would actually be implemented. We have not had a chance internally to compare our own notes and comments with regard to the legislation because with the workshop Wednesday and then Director Vollmer was leaving on Friday. So right now we are each circulating our own comments and then we will meet together to collectively put our comments together to share with you. What I would say is, and I thank you, Ray, for the clarification of what that provision is, because I know Chief and I did read it differently last week when we were in that meeting. And what I would say, just looking at this legislation, if there's a provision that takes that much explanation and it can be read in different interpretations, it probably needs to be clarified before it's actually adopted, because language that is subject to different interpretations like that is going to be ripe for conflict and potential litigation down the road. So I think there's still some work to be done as we kind of ferret out what this legislation reads and just to clarify it to make sure that we all understand what it means and that the average person and business owner can pick this up and read it and understand it. That being said, I know we will work through that ourselves and provide comments to you with some of the things that we saw. I know I saw code enforcement referenced in here. I will tell you right now, I don't want code enforcement involved in this. Commissioner Mazzola explained that the inclusion of Gahanna Police and/or code enforcement was to give police or code enforcement the option to be involved in that. I don't believe that we would want our code enforcement folks to be responsible for going inside of businesses like this. They don't currently go inside of any place like that. Their work is largely focused on what is outside and visible from the outside. So we would not want our code enforcement team to be involved in that. So that would be one of the strikes that I would have. But again, we'll collect those comments and get that to you in one red line document for you prior to the next committee meeting.
Yeah, and if I may, I wasn't part of this meeting, but I very much would like to see an MOU from the Board of Health, the Department of Health, because we can't make them do anything. They have to agree to do it. And I was going back trying to be a little more prepared and review some of this, and like I noticed, okay, there's a $400 fee. It doesn't say who collects the fee. It doesn't say where the fee goes. And is that a one-time fee? Is it going to be $400 every year? It doesn't quite say that. And those are the type of things that I would want to be cleared up. It sounds like maybe you discussed that, but I would like to see that in writing. If the money's going to go somewhere, especially the money, I'd like to have that in writing as to who's collecting the money, who's keeping the money, what the money money's being used for. I also understand that there's supposed to be like an 80-20 split if it's a, if there are fines and all involved, which is fine, but again, I want to see that in writing so that there's not a disagreement afterwards as to what, what will happen. So I would really like to see something. The only thing I remember, and I may be wrong, was there was a presentation on this by the Department of Health, and they had given us a draft of that they were working on and said that they were wanting things to look similar to something like this. And that's the last I heard. I would prefer to go from a something like this to a this is it. And this is what we're working for. And so if they have something like that, please ask them to send it to me so I know where they're coming from so I can make this say what they wanted to say.
Two things real quickly. After following our meeting with Commissioner Mazzola, he did reach out and asked that the fee be $500. So I did explain that council would set the fee for that, and that I would share that with you when we next had our discussion, so consider that shared. I don't believe we talked about the 80-20 split when we met with him last week. I don't believe that we did.
No,
That's a conversation
I
I
had,
had.
yeah, I had reached out to someone else there to clarify where the fees were, who was getting the fees, where they were going.
So just a quick question. So I think, and I did not review it today, I read this last week. Under this proposed legislation, Franklin County Public Health issues the licenses. And then if there's a revocation or a suspension of the license by Franklin County Public Health, the business owner would have the right to appeal that revocation or suspension, and that goes back to Franklin County Public Health. Does that create any due process issues or challenges around that?
That's why I brought up, when it was first brought up, I thought that sounded unfair to me, but it was,
I just don't know if that's how that's been handled in other municipalities that have adopted that, if that's something to consider.
Yes. Yeah, that was brought up in our meeting with Ray and Mr. Roth as well. The scope of services, I believe Joe was going to send to you and Miranda, maybe?
He sent us, yes, it was a sample of what they did in Hilliard.
Okay,
I thought I forwarded that to you. If I did not, I apologize.
no problem.
you send that to me too.
Yes, I will. I'm sorry, I could have sworn I did that.
So if there are any other questions,
Do we know what the licenses are set at in other communities? Are the
In terms of the fee?
The license fee, yeah.
Yeah, he did it. He said that in other jurisdictions, they've been set at 500. So for consistency's sake, he would respectfully request that ours be set at the same,
Okay.
if this were to be adopted.
And then I would change the one section that says, it says the fees will be set by, it says city/department. That was in there because we weren't sure who was going to set the fee. I would suggest the city doing the fee. And is that 500 every year, or is it
Yes.
less per,
Yes.
when you renew it? Oh, okay, same price.
I believe so.
Okay, well,
Anything else from council? Then I think it's best if we have this come back for committee on the 13th, and if possible, make a request that any questions, comments, concerns can be provided maybe the week prior, so there's option to try and get answers for those before.
Yes, I committed to Councilwoman Padova last week that we would meet next week internally when Director Volmer returns, and that we would get her a red line version by the end of next week so that you have that in plenty of time then before the 13th.
All right, thank you. Did you have something else, Ms. Bowers?
No, it'll give us, 3 weeks before the next committee meeting?
Yes.
Because of a fifth Monday.
Monday, right.
All right.
Go trick or treat.
On Tuesday night.
Is it? Oh, it is, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Morpsey.
Yes, okay, thank you, everybody, for that. Next up, we have items from the Department of Engineering. Ordinance authorizing a contract with Dirt Dog Excavating. Good evening, Director.
Yes. Good evening, Chair Weaver, members of council. Recently, the city advertised for bids for the Claycraft water line replacement as a part of the CIP. This replaces aging 1960s era 12-inch water line with a 16-inch water main to support the growth in the area. Bids were received on October 11th. 7 bids were received. Dirt Dog Excavating was the lowest of the 7 respondents. Bid summary is included, and we're recommending award of a contract with Dirt Dog, slightly over $2.2 million with a 10% contingency, taking it just over $2.4 million. Any questions?
Colleagues? Just real quick, Director, I believe Dirt Dog's done some other work for us this past year, is that correct?
Yes, the East Johnstown stormwater improvements, and they're also under contract to do work on Havens Corners as well, and that work we anticipate starting up here over the winter months.
Any concerns with?
No.
Dirt Dog? Okay. All right, then on for first on the 6th and second on the 20th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, items from the Department of Public Service. Looks like we've got a couple here. Good evening, Director.
Good evening. I have 2 items this evening. The first would be an ordinance authorizing the Director of Public Service to award and the mayor to enter into a contract with Complete General Construction for streetlight and traffic infrastructure maintenance. The Department of Public Service manages nearly 1,900 streetlights and over 40 signal intersections located throughout the city. The infrastructure requires periodic maintenance and remaining in good working order, which is performed by outside vendors. On September 29th of 23, bids for streetlight and traffic infrastructure maintenance were open and reviewed. We had 3 bids, received 1 of which was deemed a non-responsive due to failure to provide required information. The lowest responsive and best bidder is Complete General Construction. The initial term of this contract is for 3 years, commencing January 1 of 24 and ending December 31st of 26.
Before we go to questions from colleagues, on the Dirt Dog contract, are folks okay with consent on that one? I did not ask.
Oh, yes.
Yes. All right. Questions as to the streetlights? I did wonder, Director, if you could speak to the bid summary. Just 'cause the attachment we have was all hourly rates, and so I was trying to understand how we tried to evaluate a total cost.
It's basically a service contract, so we only get charged for when we call them out to replace light poles that may get hit due to accidents or lights being out in a neighborhood, and so we get invoiced monthly.
And then I know the initial term is for 3 years, but with 2 optional 1-year renewals, as a matter of process, would those 1-year renewals be coming back before council?
Not if the contract allows for the 1-year renewals.
Okay.
Then that's what you would be voting on in the beginning, to allow that.
All right. Thank you, appreciate the clarification. Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Bowers.
Director, on the bid summary, I note that Jess Howard is identified as non-responsive, and their rates are significantly lower than what we see from the other 2 bidders. Could you explain that a little bit to us?
Yeah, when we send when we send out when we send out for the bid package, we asked for each bidder to provide certain documentation. For whatever reason, Jess Howard did not provide all the information, so that made them non-responsive, where the other 2 did provide everything.
And to further add, I believe we've had prior precedent where we've had the similar situation with other bidders who did not provide all of the mandatory information, and they were deemed to be non-responsive as well. So in order to be consistent, we had to do the same thing here.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I think the kind of concern that I have is just that Jess Howard's been providing this service to the city. Is that right? And so the other, and just looking at the rate differences and potentially locking us into what a 5-year term with this contract, it makes me a little concerned about just cost differences. And so perhaps would it be possible to shorten the term with Complete General so that we don't have a 5-year term where we had a great relationship with a contractor at a much lower hourly rate?
Not sure we can shorten the term after it's been advertised as a
Right,
bid.
once it's
Yeah.
been bid.
To clarify, you have a 3-year term with 2 optional extensions. So technically, yeah, you could technically get to 5. But the bid package specifically says that they're bidding on at a minimum a 3-year contract. So you cannot shorten the term without negatively impacting the bid.
Does that guarantee, but it doesn't guarantee 5, does it?
It does not guarantee 5. No, we can choose not to extend after the third year, the
So
36 months.
it's our option to extend,
Correct.
or mutual, perhaps.
Yeah, and I believe actually this is if I remember correctly, this is the 3rd year of Jess Howard's contract, and we chose to rebid it.
Why did we choose to rebid it?
We chose to rebid it. We actually added to the scope a little bit, which added some traffic control components to it.
Okay.
And then, while we do have good performance with Jess Howard, there are at times the need to review these things periodically to make sure that the taxpayer is getting the best for their dollar. And we felt it best to rebid this.
If we were to express concern with the 25%, in some cases, rate increase that we're seeing here, and suggest that we were not comfortable with accepting the contract, would we be allowed to reopen bidding?
I don't exactly know, Ray, how that works per the ORC and what the bid requirements are. I don't necessarily know. We had a long, lengthy conversation as to how we should select the lowest and most responsive bidder. Back and forth, we don't have precedent where we've allowed either a submission of documents that have been missed or set the precedent for adjusting the bid. We didn't feel comfortable that we had a substantive reason to disqualify the entire bid and rebid the project based on this. It is $60,000. It's $60,000 over 3 years. It also, like Director had indicated, it is basically a time and materials type of contract. So these things are weighed based on previous performance, previous requests, and then the rates that were established. There was a question as to whether or not $1,500 was substantial, and we actually at the time said yes, it was. The spec sheet was adjusted because there was a small error that was made after the meeting was actually taking place between the Complete General and I'm going to butcher their names, but Asphalt. There was a discrepancy of, it originally came up as $1,500, and it was said Complete General is the lowest and most responsive.
Yeah, and I appreciate the concern about not demonstrating any favoritism and making sure that we're doing this appropriately. It's certainly, my concern as well. And also, thank you for putting into context kind of the total scope of this. I don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish and force sort of redoing this project. So it's a total anticipated contract is in the $60,000 range for the 3-year term. Is that my understanding?
I'm sorry, say that again?
The total contract
No,
is
the-
anticipated to be $60,000 over a 3-year
The
term?
difference between Jess Howard's cost and Complete General's was about $60,000
I
over the
see.
3 years.
I see.
It's I don't remember the exact numbers, I don't have them in front of me, obviously, 200 and, was it in the?
Yeah,
two-
it's about 200.
Yeah.
I would say in answer to your question, if council votes it down, then we don't have a contract.
Yeah. And so in that case, would we would continue, we could potentially continue.
We would most likely, at that point, I believe we would rebid it, correct, right?
Because we wouldn't have a contract with Jess Howard either, because our contract is expired. We just wouldn't have a contract.
Correct.
So we'd have to rebid it.
Right, and this went to bid. So this is before you guys tonight to avoid emergency and waiver, and so that we can make sure that we are on top of it for January 1st, which makes this process, yeah.
Anything else, Ms. Bowers?
No, thank you.
Colleagues? I might recommend then that we put this on for first, have it come back to committee in case our other colleagues have any questions, comments, concerns, and then we'll put it on regular for now, on the 20th, but it can get moved to consent at next committee if so desired. Does that work?
Okay, yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next item, please.
Okay, the second item is the ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations for the water meter fees. The Department of Public Service has received funds over the last quarter from the water meter fees. These funds currently are unappropriated and unencumbered, and the department respectfully requests an ordinance authorizing supplemental appropriations.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right, are we good with first and then consent on this one?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Director. Next up, items from the Department of Finance. Good evening, Director.
Have two items tonight. First one is a request for a resolution for a transfer of appropriations. Two reasons. The first one is related to a SOAR project. There's currently $39,000 sitting in the SOAR operating fund, and the desire is to move this to the SOAR capital fund to be used for the old Gahanna sanitary SOAR project. So the first part of that is a transfer from the SOAR professional development account to the SOAR transfer out, and then authorization to go ahead and transfer those funds to the SOAR capital fund. The second part of this is related to a projection of salaries and benefits to year end. There's a couple of reasons why actual results vary: timing, timelines, changes in positions, qualifying events that cause a change in insurance. So we do a projection a year end and figure out kind of where those shortfalls are, maybe where we have some excess funds. So we found a need to transfer $25,000 in the general fund from marketing and communications to council insurance. So that is the first action item, is those transfers of appropriations.
Any questions? All right, on for consent on the 6th then? All right, thank you. Next item, please.
Second item is kind of tied into that first one, related to that SOAR project. So once the funds are actually transferred over to the capital fund, this is a request to go ahead and appropriate those funds pending approval for that project. The second part of this is still related to that salaries and benefits projection. And also we took a look at our TIF funds to make sure that we could meet our obligations for the year. So that chart below kind of outlines a request for supplemental appropriations for salaries and benefits for the street fund, the parks fund, and then we have the West Gahanna and the Johnstown TIF funds that also need additional appropriations.
Questions from colleagues? All right, for this one, are we good with first and then consent then? All right, thank you very much, Director. We're plugging along now. There we go. All right, items from the Department of Economic Development. Good evening, and thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Mr. Weaver, members of the council.
There we go.
Good evening, Mr. Weaver, members of council. I'm here to discuss two ordinances related to the development area known as Crescent at Central Park. Joining me are Griffin Caldwell. Would you like to come up? Griffin Caldwell, who is with the Casto Company and the Crescent at Central Park LLC, and Sean McCarter, outside legal counsel, Albert and Albers, that helped us with some of the attachments for the second ordinance you'll hear about shortly. The two items before you tonight represent the execution of elements outlined in the development agreement with Central Park LLC in December of 2022. The elements included in that document reflect the public infrastructure improvements for the new streets into the Crescent area, the tax increment financing legislation that we use to cover the construction expenses, the construction management, and the reimbursement of costs. The first ordinance tonight, 0076, authorizes the mayor to apply for a state infrastructure bank loan, better known as the SIB loan, in the amount of $2 million to assist with the roadway construction. The loan is for 20 years at 3% interest. The estimated total cost of the construction for the roadways is about $4.4 million. The $2 million loan and remaining balance of $2.4 million would be covered initially by the developer with TIF proceeds from the project area used to reimburse the developer. The roadways are depicted in orange on the map that you were provided in your packet. That's an approximate location. There's still some design that needs to be completed before those actual roadway areas are determined. Would you like me to go on for the second item?
Next item, please.
Okay. The second ordinance, 0077, authorizes the mayor to enter into a construction agreement with the developer so they may act as the contractor for the roadway construction. The construction must meet all city standards and be performed using prevailing wage. The ordinance also provides for the execution of SIB shortfall guarantee from the developer, which will hold the city harmless for any shortfall in the TIF related to the construction projects. However, we also have our finance director here to talk about the TIF and our belief that the TIF will cover the construction without any problem. As you know, the first project is already underway there for the ortho project, and the apartments will be shortly thereafter. So we believe it's going to be really very substantial in the TIF return to us. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. I think we can tackle questions for both items. Colleagues? Ms. Barrison?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Director. I think just for the good of the public, could you explain just very briefly about how this project falls into the scope of TIF, proper TIF use?
Yes, going back again to the approval from last year in December, all of these items were outlined in the development agreement, and the TIF area was identified as the source for the construction at that time. So these ordinances and documents basically are executing that development agreement from then.
And more specifically, construction of a roadway project such as this is a proper use of TIF funds? Is that?
It is, very much so. It was identified, and this is exactly what TIFs were created to do, is to pay for the infrastructure, public infrastructure in the area. It will be a dedicated road, that is correct. So it is a public dedicated roadway. The developer is acting as the contractor, but they have to do it to our specifications.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Nova?
I think I'm good right now.
All right.
Just comment, I guess, for the good of the order, since we have Mr. McCarter and Mr. Caldwell here. Thank you for your work on this. And I know we spent a lot of time on the development agreement last year. So I see this as just making sure that we're tying up what we need to do pursuant to that development agreement. Is that fair?
Yeah, this is papering the deal, if you will. You know, the development agreement saw this to provide kind of the higher level, if you will, and now we're down into the details to provide for construction of the road, to facilitate your ability also to apply for that SIV loan, and have the knowledge that you got the ability, that money to get this road done, and the commitment by the developer, if you will, to make up the difference. And then you have the SIV loan, and it's the time for repayment. It is done so that your TIF money would be there to repay the loan. What you baked into the development agreement was kind of a concern for the shortfall, which is most likely at the front end, before the improvements have the value necessary to throw off the service payments sufficient to cover the loan. And that's where this guarantee comes in, wherein the developer is obligated pursuant to the terms of the development agreement to make up those shortfalls and so forth. And entitled to recover as the money's become available, but so that the idea being that Gahanna wasn't going to come out of pocket to make those SIV loan payments, and the risk being that the project developed slower and the TIF money wasn't there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the design of this, and that was what was put in the development agreement. And Griffin and I have worked on this and are satisfied on behalf of the city and on behalf of the developer that this is a good agreement. Very excellent.
I do think your microphone was off for that, but Mr. Clerk, do you think we got that?
Barely.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'll have to, when you're transcribing, you'll have to turn the volume up. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you very much. I echo Ms. Bauer's comments. Appreciate your work on this, and yours as well, Director. Very excited to see project moving forward and for next steps. Thank you very much. Anything else for the committee? Seeing nothing further, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Much better than the 2 hours.
Well, you know.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
Gosh darn, I was, normally,
Sorry.
no need to come back, I don't think, right?
No.
First and consent.
Okay.